Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another music review. My name is Bryce, and in this one, we are going to start looking at one of the artists that I've already talked about. I tried to do like a wide little spectrum of artists, and now we're going back and we're taking a look at some more of the albums of the artists that we looked at before I add anybody else new. So for this one, we're going to be taking a look at Chris Tomlin's third studio album, which is called Arriving. This was produced back in 2004 by Sparrow Records, and this is the one that kind of helped set Chris on the path for his future career. There's 11 tracks on this album, and so let's not waste any time, but we'll get right into them. Track one is Indescribable. This has got like a smooth triplet kind of feel to it. It sets up Chris Tomlin as this, as a pretty, regular, solid praise and worship guy. I mean, it's just this song is really good. It's just, I mean, it's got really great music in it. I even heard another version of it where, it was essentially acoustic version of it, and it almost sounded like even more beautiful there. It's a song about the greatness of God and how we really can't fathom it, and it's very appropriate song, I think. Track two is Holy is the Lord. This one's got a basic guitar riff throughout. It's another praise song. A lot of these songs are praise songs still. I mean, Chris never has really strayed away from being the praise and worship guy, but some of them just kind of sound a little bit more praise and worshipy, and then some of them are just like something kind of in and of them, that's their own, basically, is what I'm trying to say. So right now, it's still kind of the very heavy praise and worship style, but there's nothing wrong with that either. And this one's very simple, yet very profound. It's just describing that how the Lord is holy and how just everything reflects back to Him, and it's just it was one of, I remember it was one of the early singles, and rightfully so. It's a good song. Track three, How Great Is Our God. So this is probably the most popular one on the album. This one kind of slows up a little bit. It's an intimate praise song, and again, it's describing the greatness of God. This particular song is one that it's sung in churches all across the nation. Chris did a world version of this where it had like a whole bunch of other different languages singing the same song, but it did not include the Hebrew language. So the Messianic writer Joshua Aaron called up Chris one day and was like, "Hey, can I make a Hebrew version of this?" And Chris was like, "Yeah, man, go for it." So that's how we got that one. But this is like easily like one of the best songs that Chris has ever written. So it's it's one, if you haven't heard it, I highly recommend you go and check it out, basically. Track four, Your Grace Is Enough. This song picks back up with guitar, pretty basic drums. The song is praising God, and also one thing of note, he asked him to remember his people. The chorus is basically just Your Grace Is Enough repeated a few times. This song was originally written by Matt Maher, or Matt Marr. I don't know how you actually pronounce his name. I'm not sure if it's a case where Matt wrote it for Chris or if Matt just wrote it and Chris asked if he could borrow it. But I like Chris's version, but we'll see when I get around to reviewing Matt's album Empty and Beautiful. I kind of like Matt's version a little bit better, but I'll explain more whenever we get to that one. But I do like Chris's version. Track 5, Unfailing Love. This one's slow and intimate. The singer is the singer describes what God means to him, and then praises God for his unfailing love. And this song actually has a guest singer on it, and it is Mr. Stephen Curtis Chapman. Which at the time, the first time I ever heard this one, I thought was perfect because I just, in my opinion, you have the two, or at least two of the greatest Christian singers to ever live. You have one who kind of defined the 80s and 90s, and one who currently defines the 2000s and the 2010s, and it's them coming together and essentially Steven is passing the torch on to Chris. It's when I found out that the two of them did a song together, I was all kinds of excited. It just really helps for me personally appreciate the song even more. Track 6, The Way I Was Made. This one picks up slightly. It's got some pretty bright guitar in the beginning. The singer expresses desire to walk and also praise, as he should be doing this whole time. It's a pretty solid song. It's not one that I regularly go back to, but it's still pretty good. There's a couple other ones on this album we'll get to that are kind of like that as well. Mighty is the Power of the Cross is track 7. This one's guitar only for most of the song. The song describes the testimony of the cross and the power it brings, and it's a pretty long song. In fact, it's the longest one on the album. It's about 6 minutes long. And this one, I guess if there's ever a contemporary hymn, this is one of them. So if you are more into hymns, then I would probably recommend this one, as well as another one we'll get to later. Track 8 is All Bow Down. This one picks up with bass and some muffled drums. The song's about Jesus' return and the praise that he will receive when he returns because he's the king. This one's kind of like The Way I Was Made. It's a really good. It's a pretty good song. I just don't go back to it regularly because I like the first few tracks on the album like really well, and I often neglect the back end of the album, so shame on me, I guess. Track 9, On Our Side. So this one kind of impressed me going back and listening to it. It's there's some other singers with Chris in this one that I don't know who they are, but they're mentioned in the lyric book, so if you ever buy the album, you can look them up. The music is essentially kind of like a pretty solid gospel style until it gets to the bridge where it's got this guitar solo that makes it sound rock. But then it goes back to being gospel anyway. So Chris's voice sounds like it's it's not soundproof, like not studio. It almost sounds more like a stage mic. There's not feedback so much, but there is a little bit there's a little bit of an echo to it to where it sounds more like a stage mic than a studio mic. So just little tidbit there. Track 10 is King of Glory. This song progresses into a pretty good temporary groove, and this one is a declaration that Jesus is king. So in that way, pretty similar to All Bow Down. Track 11 is You Do All Things Well, and I could be wrong about this, but this one I think recently has become a little bit more popular. It's another good praise song, and this one uses the platform of creation to talk about how God does all things well, and it's going back and listening to it. I like it a lot. It's might even be a little bit better of a song than Mighty is the Power of the Cross, to be honest with you. It's pretty good, and if I'm right that it is the one that's becoming popular recently, then it's with good reason. So anyway, that's all I really have for the tracks. The back half of the album was stronger than I remembered, so that's always a plus. It's a solid praise album. It really, what it did was it took the best song from the previous album, which was Enough, and essentially made a style. Kind of made the whole album essentially revolve around that style, and on that note, it makes for a really great base for Chris to work off of, and it made for a really great album. I mean, two of Chris's most popular songs are on this album, which are Indescribable and How Great Is Our God. So, a very good album. I give this album, the rating's going to seem lower than it should be, but in comparison to Chris's future albums, in order to be able to do them justice, I'm going to give this one a 4.26 out of 5. It's probably an album that deserves a better rating, and this is a very good album. I highly recommend this album, but this album even pales in comparison to some of the music that Chris is going to put out. And so in trying to keep everything fair for how good I think these things are, I believe that this is a good enough rating to where it doesn't tarnish it, but it doesn't also drag down the other ones either. My personal favorites are the first 5 tracks of the album, but I also, in going back and listening to this, I also can recommend On Our Side and You Do All Things Well. It's a really good album. I mean, Chris, you could argue that Chris kind of plays it safe in this one, but which he did in Not to Us as well, but this one's much, much better musically than Not to Us was. So, anyway, you guys, that's what I have to say about this album. I hope you guys enjoyed the review. Please check out my other reviews. If you're on YouTube, check out my drum covers. And if you're on the site, please check out other Bible studies that I've put out. And I hope to have another one of these out before too long. But until then, I hope you guys will take care.